Hello everyone and welcome to my kitchen. My name's Nick and today we are going to be making pizza from scratch. Now this isn't going to be any kind of specialty pizza. It's not New York style, it's not Sicilian. This is something that's going to be easy for you to recreate in your very own home, no matter where you are in the world. The dough comes together very easily. It has only 4 ingredients. We're gonna make sauce and we're gonna do the cheese and the pepperoni. Like I said, it's gonna be so simple, you're never gonna order takeout again. So first, let's go ahead and talk about our ingredients. I already have everything measured out, and we're gonna talk about that here shortly, but I have 250 grams of bread flour, and I'm using bread flour over other flours just because it has a higher protein content, which means we're gonna get a nice structure for our dough, and it's gonna be nice and crispy, just like we like. I have 170 grams of water, just from the tap, 5 grams of kosher salts, I always use kosher, and then 2.5 grams of instant yeast. I like using instant yeast because you can literally just add it into all of your ingredients and it's gonna work instantly. No need to bloom or anything like that. And we are using grams because when we're baking or using anything like that with flour, it's just so much easier to weigh out on the scale instead of trying to do multiple scoops. So if you have a digital scale like this, all you gotta do is turn it on and change the units over to grams. All right, let's go ahead and make our dough. So since we're using yeast in our dough, we actually want this to eventually rise. So what I like to do, because I'm not a professional baker, is I will turn my oven onto 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it gets to temperature, I turn it off and I let the residual heat on the top here help proof my dough. No professional equipment needed here, everyone. All right, so I have a medium-sized mixing bowl here. In goes my flour, my salt, my instant yeast, which is kind of sticking to the bottom here. Give it a little love tap. And then in goes my water. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a spoon and I'm just gonna go ahead and start mixing everything together. This is the fun part. So I'm just scraping down the sides here. It's gonna be a very loose and shaggy dough. But as we need it, it will come together. But right now, I'm just trying to get up all those dry bits. Once we have it incorporated, I could go ahead and take out my spoon and start getting my hands a little bit dirty. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and get our hands in there and really start working this dough to come together. And what I like about this bowl is that I'm not getting my counter all dirty. The whole mess just stays in here the whole time. Now, if you look in here, this is starting to come together, but there's still some dry bits. So I'm actually just going to take a tiny little bit of water. I might even just dip my fingers in there just to help bring it together. So I no longer want to add this as an ingredient. Like I said, just dip the fingers and that will help kind of pull everything together. Once everything has really pulled away from the bowl, I'm ready to put it onto my counter and start the kneading process. All right, so my shaggy dough ball goes onto my counter. I'm gonna go ahead and put my mixing bowl into the sink. So we're gonna go ahead and start kneading our dough now. This is gonna help give it that structure and eventually some texture in our dough. This process is gonna take about 10 to 15 minutes. So go ahead and put on your favorite song and start working those forearms. So I like to go around like that. I'm gonna pull it over on itself and then use the palms of my hands to really form it. We don't want to do it too loosey-goosey, right? We want to really put some effort into it. So you can already see that it's starting to take form, but we're not there yet, right? It's easily breakable just like that. We want to develop this so it gets nice and stretchy. Okay, so I've been kneading for about 15 minutes or so. If you have a stand mixer, you can absolutely use that and save your forearms, but I'm here to show you that you really don't need all that fancy equipment, even though I own one. All right, so as you can see, it's starting to smooth out and take shape and take form. It's a little springy, but what I'm gonna do first is I'm actually gonna go ahead and put it in my bowl. No oil, I'm just gonna put a little plastic wrap on top for now. I'm gonna let it sit for about 10 minutes, and I'm gonna show you why. Okay, so the reason that I wanted this to sit for just about 10 minutes before we get into the proofing stage is because I do want to pull that gluten window, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and take this out to show you what I mean. We took 10-15 minutes to get that structure of the dough, right? We worked it all up, it's nice and tight, but now we needed it to relax for just a little bit. And so I'm going to go ahead and just start pulling loosely right, on my dough, and you should be able to pull it up just a little bit and then see through it without it tearing too much, right? If you start ripping and tearing at it, it will obviously rip, but if you just pull lightly on it, you should be able to see that gluten window that we're talking about. So it looks like a see-through glass. So this tells me that we are ready to go ahead and get this back into the bowl, and then we're gonna proof this for about an hour. We're gonna let it ferment, right? Some people will go 24 hours, multiple days. Honestly, everyone, this will be ready in just about an hour, hour and a half, give or take. So I'm gonna put a little bit of oil into a bowl. I'm gonna take my dough ball, which looks nice and smooth, right? And then when you put your finger in there, it should bounce back slightly. I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of rub it all over. Plastic wrap goes back on, nice and tight. And then what I like to do is get a Sharpie, and I'm gonna draw a circle right around my dough ball so I know where it starts and where it finishes. And then remember when we turned on our oven at 350, I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it off. We have some nice residual heat coming off the top here. I'm gonna put this right in the middle, make sure it doesn't tip over, and then we're gonna let this sit again for about an hour, 90 minutes, give or take. All right, so while our dough is doing its thing, let's go ahead and talk about our pizza sauce. Now this is gonna be a little bit different from a tomato sauce or a marinara sauce. We're not doing any cooking here. I'm starting off with a can of crushed tomatoes. Honestly, any name brand is gonna be good. I just wanna stay away from the general store brand. And I actually use crushed tomatoes because I want this to be as easy for you as possible. I don't get whole tomatoes or diced or anything like that, because then you'll end up having to blend it. So in my bowl, I have my crushed tomatoes. Now to balance out the acidity, I'm gonna use a spoonful of sugar, right? It helps the medicine go down. You can also use a spoonful of baking soda if you like. Really, we're just trying to cut the acid here. Spoonful, just like that. I'm gonna do a pinch of kosher salt, just like that. I like to be very liberal with it. Over here, I have some dried oregano. I'm gonna do about a teaspoon of that. And then I'm gonna hit it with just a touch of olive oil. And now we mix. All right, we have that all mixed up now. And the reason I like to use crushed tomatoes is because I want the sauce to be just a little bit pulpy, but I don't want it to be too chunky. We're gonna go ahead and set this to the side until we're ready to put it on our dough. All right, for our next step, let's go ahead and talk about the cheese that we're gonna be using. I use a block form of mozzarella, part skim, low moisture, just because I don't want the cheese to melt and get all watery. If you do buy fresh mozzarella for like a margarita pizza or something like that, I would just use it sparingly so that the pizza doesn't turn into a soggy mess. And I do like to shred my own when possible. That way it has that nice kind of stretch that we're looking for when we pull a slice. Make sure your cheese is nice and cold, and it will shred nice and easily. As we get to the end of the block, I'm just gonna go ahead and put my palm on there so I don't grate my fingertips. Whoops. And here we have our mozzarella mountain. I'm gonna put this in a bowl and then back into the fridge so it stays nice and cold. That way it melts nice and evenly in the oven. All right, so last step before we get cooking here, we're gonna talk about toppings. Now, if you wanna keep it very, very simple, I would purchase a block of Parmesan. You could get this in the specialty cheese section of your local grocery store. And then I have a little microplane here. And what I like to do is when the pizza comes out, I'll just run that against the microplane. We get some fresh grated Parmesan cheese. Over here, I have some minced parsley, Italian flat leaf. You can wash it, dry it, pick off the stems and the leaves, and then mince it fine. Now, a topping that I used to do when I worked in corporate catering, it's kind of a little fun blend that you can add on the top. I'll take about a half a cup of your regular old powdered grated Parmesan cheese. The green label, absolutely. If you want to use Kraft, go for it. Half a cup goes in. Going back to the oregano, I'm going to do about another teaspoon. If you like a little bit of spice in your pizza, you could do crushed chili flakes as well. About a teaspoon. Then I'm just gonna go ahead and blend this together. And now I have a cheesy, spicy herb mixture to go on top of the pizza. You're looking for about 75 to 80% cheese, and then 10% oregano, 10% chili flake. All right, we're gonna go ahead and let our dough continue to rise, and then we're gonna go ahead and get it going in the oven. What is your favorite pizza topping? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to thumbs up this video. All right, so my dough has rested for about 90 minutes or so, and as you can see, it has doubled in size, so we're ready to start making our pizza. But first, I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my oven to the highest degrees that it could go to. So mine's about 500 to 550. You want high heat. I know we all don't have pizza ovens at home, so you can use a regular oven. If it has the convection setting, use that. All right, we're going to 550. I'm gonna take my plastic wrap off, and the first thing I'm gonna do is just actually punch this down. Release some of that gas there. Now again, I don't expect us all to be professional pizza makers at home, so I'm gonna show you the easiest at-home trick to making really good pizza. Ta-da! A sheet tray. I know what you're saying, what, a sheet tray? Now I know a lot of you do not have a pizza stone at home or even those fancy countertop pizza ovens. So this is the most foolproof way that you can make it without making a giant mess of this pizza, because trust me, I've seen bad things happen to good people. So first thing I wanna do is just put a little bit of olive oil into my sheet tray, really not a ton, that's barely even a teaspoon. I'm gonna use my fingers to wipe it from end to end, just like that. And then on to the sheet tray goes my dough. Now again, at this point here, I just wanna start moving it from end to end as even as possible. Too many people try and get cute and fun and toss it up in the air, and then it falls on the ground. And at this point, this dough is a sponge, and so it's gonna pick up anything that it touches. And we do not wanna get dirt or hair or anything like that into our pizza dough. So with letting it sit for 90 minutes, right, it is allowed to stretch just like this from end to end with the sheet tray. It'll pull back slightly, but not too much. If you don't let this rest long enough, it will spring back too much. So I wanna go end to end. This is a pretty small sheet tray, nothing too big. That amount of dough that we made, probably enough for maybe 2 people to share. So as you can see, it's pretty evenly stretched here. I'm putting my fingertips just at the edge to give it a little bit of a crust formation. So we have something to work with here. And now I'm gonna use a technique called docking. I'm just gonna take my fork here and I'm just gonna make little teeny tiny pushes into the dough with it. You don't wanna rip it or tear it. You just wanna literally go back and forth just like that. And the reason that we're doing this is to prevent any of those giant air bubbles in our pizza while we're baking. I know we've all picked up that pizza from your local pizza chain. You get home and there's these giant bubbles in it. No sauce, no cheese, pretty gross. All right, that looks good right there. All right, so we have our pizza sauce from earlier. We have our shredded mozzarella. And then I like using these pepperoni cups. I think the whole world's obsessed with them. I am too, as opposed to the larger pepperonis, just because I like when they cook and then they kind of curl up and they get nice and crispy. Absolutely delicious. You can add any kind of topping at this juncture if you want, but I'm keeping it super, super simple. All right, so with our sauce that we made earlier, I'm gonna take a spoonful, I'm gonna go on the left, and then another spoonful go on the right, and that's probably gonna be all the sauce that I need. Unless you like your pizza super, super saucy, and you're not afraid of it getting just a little bit too wet, then you really don't need a lot. And then I'm just kind of spreading it out, working from the center out, just like this. So nice thin layer, really don't need too much. A little goes a long way, and I'm done. Easy peasy. Don't worry, I'm gonna make more pizzas with this. All right, so as far as the cheese goes, right, I'm Italian, so I measure the cheese with my heart, okay? So I'm gonna just start with a couple of handfuls, and again, I wanna spread it nice and evenly, so I don't get too much cheese in one area, and then not enough cheese in the other. And you can use your hands to kind of spread it out as well. Look to make sure that you don't have any major clumps. And again, you don't need to go too heavy on it. I love a good cheesy pizza, but if you go too heavy, it will get a little bit soggy on you. Same thing when you go to add your toppings. If you add too much, it'll get heavy and then it can actually break the dough. I think that looks like a good amount. It's a fair amount, I'd say. All right, nice and even. Now we go on with our pepperoni cups. So I like to just kind of go in a straight line. You could overlap, you could have them be like a 1/4 inch apart, really doesn't matter. Use your judgment. I might separate that a little bit more. I want to make sure I have plenty of pepperonis on my pepperoni pizza. All right, she's ready to go into the oven. All right, our oven has got to 550 degrees. I put it on the convection setting. That'll help air circulate around it just a little bit more. I'm gonna go into the middle rack here. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and set a timer for about 5 minutes. With it being at this high heat, it's not gonna take very long. At that point, I wanna rotate it in the oven, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. All right, so my timer just went off, so I'm just gonna go ahead and rotate this pan in the oven. So very carefully with some tongs or with a towel, I'm just gonna move it just like that. I'm gonna put it back in for about another 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, so this has been in the oven for a total of about 8 minutes. You can start to see we're getting some color here. Now here is the most difficult part if you can do it. What I like to do is make sure that we have no sticking on here, and I just slide it off of the sheet tray and have the pizza just alone like that on the rack. All right, so after about another 2 to 3 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and try and get this back onto my sheet tray, which is pretty simple. Now we're gonna go finish it off. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and come off of our sheet tray, just like that. A lot of people like to make themselves a little bit of garlic oil and then just brush it onto the crust. If you don't have it, not the end of the world. I didn't make any today. So like we talked about earlier, you can absolutely grate some fresh Parmesan on top like that, and it starts to melt right away. You could take some of that Parmesan blend that we made, go on with that. I love how it's just absorbing into the oil from those pepperoni cups. And then just a touch of that freshly minced parsley. And if you don't want to do any of these steps, you can literally just take it out of the oven, cut it up, and start eating. If you have a pizza roller at your house, you could definitely use that, or you can absolutely just use a chef's knife. All right, I'm gonna make one cut right down the middle, turn it, and then I'm gonna cut this into 6 pieces, I think. Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at the undercarriage. Not too bad. Nice and crispy on the bottom. Good amount of air pockets in the crust. Nice crispy cups of pepperoni. Hot. I love that there's just enough of a cheese pull, but it's not completely falling apart. Letting it sit on the cutting board for about 3 to 4 minutes will help with that. Because if you cut right into it, right when it comes out of the oven, it's gonna be a big cheesy mess. I love the kick from the chili flakes, love the saltiness of the cheese. This is a really solid pizza, and it's really not that difficult to make. So that wraps up our video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the recipe. If you did, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and we'll have some new recipes coming your way very soon. Cheers.